Welcome to The Other Side, where we take a ride each week and discuss our guests' personal journey, their hard work, sacrifice, struggles and failures, along with their passion, dedication, and determination. This is The Other Side. This week on The Other Side, we have a wonderful musician and record producer. Can't wait to meet him. Without any further ado, the one and only Richard Livoni. Hello, everybody. Welcome to The Other Side. I am very excited to get to meet this gentleman in front of me. Chris, how are you doing?
I'm doing good this morning. I'm happy to be here. Richard is our guest today, and just an interesting gentleman. Got to listen to some of his music last night and get to know him a little bit better with all the material that I reviewed, and I'm excited to do this interview today.
Let's start with the fact that you've been in the game for a long time. I was going through your stuff, and guitarist, obviously musician, recorder. You got a recording studio. You've had multiple recording studios. Jazz. I don't have a single idea what goes on with jazz, but I'm intrigued by it, and I know that it's a lot of people love it. But thank you for being here. Welcome to The Other Side, Mr. Richard Livoni.
Richard Livoni, yes. Yes.
How are you, my friend?
I'm doing good. It's one of those names that gets mispronounced throughout your entire life.
Which one do you prefer? Prefer Livoni or
Livoni?
Blitz?
Yes,
or,
it's Richard Livoni. But people also
know
me as Richard Blitz,
right?
Because of my association with Blitz Recording Studios and the Blitz Brothers, which is a band that I still perform with, and we're kind of a concerts only thing. I made my living playing in the Blitz Brothers since 1973.
Wow.
And then kind of got tired of the scene around 1986, and then eventually came back into it. But I wasn't doing it for a living. I had started the recording world in about 1986, and was doing okay with that. So but I still go out and do shows. I have three bands. I have my band GTF, which is smooth jazz. And I'm lucky enough to play with some super hotshot A-list players with that. And I have a band called Sons of Edison, which is more of a virtual songwriting kind of a band. And we're just getting ready to release our third CD. It's actually done, mastered, and ready to go. And then I have the Blitz Brothers, which I've been doing literally since 1973 or 74. In those days, we weren't keeping track, actually. So
I love it.
Yeah.
Hey, so many things going on there. First of all, three bands. People have time for one, and rehearsals and schedules and all that. How do you manage three bands?
Well, right now, there are no live shows happening right now. The last show that I did was we played live up at Studio West up in North County, studio that I used to work at for about a minute, and we did the San Diego Music Awards. Blitz Brothers performed for that, and I was lucky enough to somehow get the Lifetime Achievement Award at the San Diego Music Awards 2020.
Wow!
What a weird year for it to happen. So the last show that I've done live with the Blitz Brothers was performing for the broadcast for that. I've done a couple of sessions since then, where the GTF Jazz Project came in, but the studio has been pretty much locked down since
March?
1 year and 2 days ago.
Right.
March 7th last year.
Yeah.
And now it's looking like things are going to open back up again. But
slowly but surely. But take me back. What, like you said, in 1973, you started. You were part of that band, but I mean, were you playing? Were you practicing by yourself? You got together with some friends?
I've been playing music and performing since I was a little kid. My brother Don and I, he's 2 years older than I am. We were the little kids who would come up and do our folk music sets for my parents' cocktail parties when we were really 7, 8 years old.
Wow.
So we had set lists and outfits. And we would come up and do whole sides of Kingston Trio albums or Christy Minstrel Night. And we would do, or Peter, Paul and Mary, that's the era that I come from, the folk music. And, we were just totally absorbed by music from the get-go. And so all we did was just bother my dad.
Really?
We would be downstairs and my dad actually had a baseball bat, and he would, when we start getting too loud, he would hit the floor, and then we'd go, okay, stop, and we would go suddenly very quiet. Then eventually, we'd get back into it, and and he hit the floor again. I always say, if it hadn't been for
your limiter,
the kind of discouragement, they encouraged us, and they were both very musical, but not late at night. But that kind of kept us going, and really, we were locked in. I've been the same with music since I was about 7 or 8 years old. It's something that just always it was something that I could do. Everything from playing at the PTA. I was also a crippled kid when I was from about age 12 to about 16.
Wow,
I was
what happened?
on crutches and in wheelchairs and stuff, and had a lot of surgeries on my legs. And at 12 years old, I lived in Colorado. In Littleton, Colorado is where I was raised. And since there was, it's snowing, crutches, so I would just stay home and play the guitar every day. Literally, I'd come home from school and put on records and learn them note for note. And pretty much that was a long kind of 3 or 4 year period of not being able to really do what everyone else did. So I really went in, and my older brother kept on with the regular life, but I sort of, at some point, I realized that I could do it. I could actually do it. And we had bands. We would play, even when I was like a freshman in high school, we were playing in coffee houses and stuff like that, opening for Nitty Gritty Dirt Band or Linda Rondstadt. We would play it up
Really?
at different nightclubs and stuff. So at that point we were playing jug band music and ragtime, sort of World War I music. We got locked in on that. I've had many phases where we were really into country music and like bluegrass, not country music like you think of today.
Right.
But I like all kinds of music. I like everything. Totally I like good music.
Right. Now, back in those days, like rock and roll exploded. Did you lean towards that a little bit?
Immediately. We were sort of against electric guitars really early on because they were real cheesy sounding. But then the song that turned me around was House of the Rising Sun. That guitar riff, I went, okay. And within a week, we went out and rented an electric guitar, which I then walked out on a back porch holding it barefooted. And suddenly I had this rental guitar that was electrified, and I was getting shocked, and I couldn't let go of it, Finally laid it on a Chase Lounge and learned a big lesson right there,
Right.
It's electric.
Wow. So by 73, you mentioned that because that's like the first like formal
That's when I started the Blitz Brothers. But I had other bands all through high school and
Right.
Before that, I had a band called Fast Eddie, and interesting. All those guys are still in the music business. We all kept going in our different things. I'm still in contact with the guitar player I played with, literally when I was 20.
Wow.
Yeah. But Blitz Brothers started in about 1973. It was I had been playing in Fast Eddie, and on Halloween night, I think 1973, we had a huge warehouse studio that we all rented that was also became kind of a nightclub, and we got robbed, and all the instruments, all the amplifiers, everything got stolen except the set of drums. I think they didn't take that because it was so huge,
Right.
So suddenly it was over, and I thought, well, I'll find another guitar. And in the interim, I went and saw this band playing at a place called Finnegan's Rainbow that we wound up playing. And it was a very famous nightclub in Costa Mesa up in Orange County, and saw a band there, and I saw this bass player, and I went, wow, that guy is something else. Within a month, I had reformed a whole nother band with a great piano player and organ player, and it was a five-piece band. Original Blitz Brothers was a five-piece, easy for me to say,
Right.
five-piece band. And then we went through probably a lot of different stages. Our early thing was myself, a guy named Danny Jameson, a guy named Sonny. Oh, no, Sonny Ray was later. Steve Faulkner on piano, still a great, serious musician who lives back in Kentucky, and myself and Danny Jameson. And Dickie Dodd had come from the band The Standells. He was the lead singer of The Standells, who, I don't know if you remember, they had a song, a couple of huge hits, Love That Dirty Water, Boston, You're My Home, and another one, Good Guys Don't Wear White or something like that, or black. I can't remember. But he had toured with the Rolling Stones, and it was the band that would be on television on the Merv Griffin show, or
Wow.
it would be the backing band on television shows like the Munsters, and he was even on Jack Benny and
Now, when
Jack
he
Park.
when he hooked up
Yeah.
with you guys, were you guys were like, oh man, you've been.
I somehow I wasn't. I mean, we knew he was a star. I mean, he was, but turned out he had kind of a weird thing that I found out years later with the Standells. And when they broke up, a lot of their backing was from sort of shaky, murky kind of areas, and those were the days when someone could say, "We're going to make you guys stars," but and they would have your single could be on every jukebox in America, which was the format of the day.
Right.
Yeah. There was no YouTube. You could have a song on the jukebox within 2 weeks after cutting it and turn it into a hit. There was people who had power in those days.
Right, to
Well, when
position.
this band broke up, we didn't know it at the time, but he was sort of, we found out later that there was sort of kind of a blackballed issue where he couldn't, you'll never make it in this town again kind of thing, because it
Wow.
ended, I guess, badly.
Pissed off somebody, huh?
But he had played for about a year before that in a group called Joshua, which was one of our competitors in the Orange County area, and the club scene around LA and there was just, I mean, it was happening. We would play 29 days in a row. Sometimes we would do 2 shows a day.
Wow.
No, we would do 5 sets every night, and then pack up a baby grand piano, a B3 organ, 2 Leslies, the entire band and the PA, and go and play at another nightclub from 2:30 a.m. until 6:30 a.m. At the after hours clubs, we'd play for like lowriders and really, everyone yelling out Santana, so you had to, a Santana song. Places out in real just huge ballrooms that they would do literally from 2 o'clock in the morning till 6 o'clock in the morning.
Wow.
And you'd get out and it would be getting light, go get a little bit of sleep, go and do it. And we would do that 5 days a week sometimes. Literally moving all the equipment too,
Now, That is a lot of work. I mean, talk about passion. You guys were like really, really into it, like that, because it's serious dedication.
Well, it's how we made our living. So, you know, and we were totally absorbed by it. And it was also a situation where, you know, we played cover songs, but you could write a song and play it that night. If, you know, and we had the ability to somehow, or the courage, or the stupidity to do that. So we were known as a band who, you know, it was a very improvisational band. I loved all the great guitar players. I stole all my stuff from Hendrix and Clapton and Jeff Beck. And,
Wow.
you know, so it was all, no, you didn't play the song the same way ever. You'd never played it the same way. So it was all real. It was real performance, you know, and improvising every solo. There was nothing written down at all.
What was your biggest influence at that point? Who were you vibing with?
Clapton, Hendrix, Jeff Beck. That, you know, the English guitar players loved all the great blues guys. Loved the early Fleetwood Mac. Those guitar players. Every guitar player. I mean, I stole from everybody. You know, I would learn. Early Eric Clapton records, I would learn those note for note. You know,
I totally got that last night. I was listening to your music, and I was right there. I was like, it has to be Clapton. He's got a big blues influence, like amazing.
Yeah, he wrote he kind of. I mean, he stole all his stuff. So you know.
Why not? Yeah.
I just listened to Freddie King doing "Hideaway," you know, one of the greatest instrumental blues songs ever made off the John Mayall album, and he's kind of took it sort of note for note too. He had a way better guitar tone, but it's the same song.
Yeah. No, amazing stuff.
Now, you're obviously a guitarist. And in these bands, who would write all the lyrics? Are you talking about making up songs and singing them?
Oh no! I mean, myself and Danny Jameson, we were writing, you know, and we were always doing showcases, you know, for record companies. We were always trying to get deals and get signed, get the big thing. I never got the huge deal. We turned down a lot of little deals. Or you know, there was always somebody around who would said, "Hey, we want to put 50 grand in the band." I could never bring myself to do that because I thought, I don't want to owe somebody 50 grand. You know, turned out everybody else was doing it. You know, the Aerosmiths of the world, all those people were doing it, and they didn't even think about paying anyone back. You know, but I couldn't bring myself to, you know, what are you going to give somebody for 50 grand? And in those days, there was a lot of bands that were being signed, and you know, they'd get maybe $75,000, $100,000, and then they would it would just fizzle after that. And then not only did they not make it on that first round, but then they still owed the money back to the record company. So the next deal was even harder to get because someone had to pay that off in order to sign them the second time. You know, so.
But it's always been like the record deals. They weren't really losing money. They were making all kinds. I mean, the artists always
the artist never made money ever. You know,
Right.
unless you got really huge. But we were always going after the big deal. You know, we were always showcasing in Hollywood and playing in L.A. and you know, we would play in anywhere in Hollywood. All the famous clubs from the 80s.
And that must have been.
Yeah.
You must have some stories about, you know, that scene, those days.
Yeah.
Oh my God, it's just hilarious. When I think back, if somebody should make a movie of this whole scene that we lived in, just from the whole bartender scene, the whole scene. You know, if you're playing in a giant 3 ballroom place in Hollywood, gay disco, and you know, you're the rock and roll band, you see some insane stuff, you know. And of course, then you know, you'd see people, huge stars coming in all the time, and there's Truman Capote, or you know, whatever. So yeah, The first time we played for weeks and weeks as a house band at a place called what was it? Not the Starwood. That was another big famous one that we used to play at. The name escapes me now. The Bitter End West, a huge nightclub on Santa Monica Boulevard, and we were really green. We didn't know anything, and we were trying to figure out how to get into the building, and we pulled into a driveway and it circled around at a gas station and saw a woman sitting at a bus stop and said, "Excuse me, ma'am, can you tell us how to get to the Bitter End?" And the woman turned around and said, "Yeah, it's right around the corner," and we went, "Wow, we're in another world." So that was our introduction, and then we realized, oh, this is this huge gay nightclub, and it was a blast. It was fantastic. There would be probably maybe 1,000 people in this place, and 3 different rooms, one folk room and one jazz room upstairs, and the bathrooms were like, everything. They didn't need a men's and a women's bathroom. Let's put it that way. It was a big awakening.
Wild times.
They were ahead of the game.
Yeah. No, well, this was Hollywood in like late 70s.
Oh, man.
Probably 1977, 78. But it was great. It was really fun.
Did all those clubs that it's always been like a mix of movie stars and people wanting to be seen and especially in the local bars and it always did you guys ever come across people like that, movie stars at the time?
We were in the music world, and we were always, I have many brushes I call them brushes with fame, where suddenly, you're going to be a big star, and you're doing showcases and different all the different scenes with the attorneys and everything, and we would do showcases where they would cater the thing, and you'd do these big productions, and all the attorneys and all the record companies would be there, and everyone's going, "Oh my God, this is going to be great!" Or playing at the place like the Troubadour, which I think is still there, and someone would come back upstage, upstairs in the back room, and the vice president of whatever company, we had dozens of those things, and literally all of them became bad deals that you went, okay, I see how this works. So we turned down a lot of deals that now I look back and I go, well, was that a mistake? Now that I look back at how everything worked, the best thing in the world is maybe making it in a little rock and roll band in 1978. The things that can happen to you that I saw happen to a lot of people in those days is a year later, their life was, their family was destroyed. That, suddenly doing that has a splattergun effect on what happens to you after that.
Right.
Sort of unintended consequences of what happens when you sign on the dotted line,
Absolutely.
And now that I look back, that's freaking 50 years ago. It's a long time ago. I don't know that I would have had the longevity and been getting, suddenly now I'm entrenched in the business and having more success now than I've ever had. So I look back and I go, maybe that's all happened for a reason. Maybe it all just had to have a longer progression with me. And I've been with my wife. I've been with her since 1973.
Wow.
Oh, so, since the Blitz Brothers days.
I met her in 1973, but since 1976. So that if I had gone out and gotten hugely famous, we were playing in these big shows and stuff, and stadiums and stuff, but never went out on the world tour or anything like that. Okay. Now that and then after being on the road, you go, it's not all that it's cracked
It's
up to
not
be.
as
It's really
glamorous,
lonely
yeah.
and it's really awful. And it's boring for 23 hours a day. So I look back and I say, well, maybe all this turned out to be just how it was supposed to go. And, now, so...
Because the fact of the matter is, like there was wild days. I mean, alcohol, drugs, and a lot of those people lived the fast life, and then unfortunately, it kind of ended a little bit sooner than it should have.
we were in the middle of that whole thing. I mean, it was crazy. It was totally crazy. But some people went off the deep end.
Yeah.
I was able to make it through. I mean, God, so many of the people that I worked with are not even alive anymore. So I don't know how I
It was all planned.
kind of snuck through.
Well, one of the things you started doing, and I know that you've always had studios, so that's another thing that like most musicians, especially at a certain level, okay, I'm just gonna go and play, whatever, record. But you took it to that. You wanted to actually have your studio start recording. How did that come about?
I actually have the very first tape recorder that I ever that my brother Don and I got, which was a J.C. Penney's tape recorder about this big and had a little microphone that was hooked onto it. I still have that tape recorder, little reels like about this.
Nice.
And I have little reels of us playing.
Wow.
Stuff. And then when we were playing in jug bands, through early high school, it was right before I got kind of struck by English blues and stuff and heard Eric Clapton. And during that stage, we didn't even tell anybody what kind of music we were doing because it was so off, this was not what anybody around us was listening to. We got just off on our own thing, doing this ragtime stuff, playing mandolins, banjos, washtub bass. We had a band called the Buckley Mud Band, and I never really mentioned it to any of my friends because they would have thought it was so weird. And then one day we played at our high school at something in our gymnasium, and I think I was about 14, ninth grade, and it suddenly everybody knew me. And in one moment, my life changed, and I went, this is
It's kind of cool.
I'm suddenly popular. People know me. So that was a kind of an eye opener, and I forgot what the question was.
Wait, you're the recording bug.
Okay. So we were recording ourselves all through. I went to school at California College of Arts. That's where I went to college, and up in Berkeley. And we always had tape recorders. We were always recording ourselves. So from about the age of 8 or 9, we were always recording ourselves.
Wow.
And then
So you knew about levels and signal flow.
Oh yeah, and well, we would get our hands on 2 tape recorders, so that way you could record the 2 of us playing on one, and then play it into the other tape recorder and put on the mics at the same time, so you could overdub on top of yourself.
Hey, you're doing multi-track back in the day.
Yeah, and then of course, when I was about 18, I got my first loan, got the very first 4-track, TAC 4-track, 3340, which I have one over in the studio right now. And then got another one of those. So we would play 4 tracks of stuff and then bounce that to 1 track of the other machine. Then you had 3 open channels. And then eventually bounce all that stuff back as a mix down on the other one. So that's how I got into actually making my own recordings and writing songs. That's how I would write my songs. And we were locked in on that all through the Blitz Brothers, recording ourselves.
So
first 8-track came out. I got the very first 1/2-inch Otari 8-track, which I wish I still had. Very first 16 tracks came out. Got that. So
you're getting all this equipment and you're doing your stuff, all this stuff for yourselves. But when does it turn into an actual studio where people say, "Hey, can you record this for me?"
About 1986, the whole scene. We got famous up in Orange County in L.A., and then disco happened. Suddenly, no more rock and roll places.
For a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, it phased out fast. It was like a huge change. And we then got
You
a
didn't,
gig
you didn't
in
keep
San
up.
Diego.
You didn't keep up with the Bee Gees.
No. I'm fine with all that stuff, but that wasn't what we did.
Right.
I've always been out of sync with the times, I guess, but up until recently. But so we suddenly got a gig in San Diego. San Diego was way behind LA in that, and it actually never went all the way there. And probably about 1974, first gigs in San Diego, and then suddenly we got more and more things because San Diego was more of a rock and roll city. And we started driving down. We would drive down to San Diego 5 nights a week from Orange County, every single night.
What was one of the venues that you guys frequent? Yeah.
The first venue that we played in San Diego that we got really popular in was a place called Leadbetters.
Okay.
Fantastic nightclub. I still get people on Facebook going, man, I used to see you guys at Leadbetters. We had a huge, great following, and we became very successful down here. Leadbetters, Neutral Grounds. We started at a place called Wallbangers, which was right down by Midway. The building isn't even there. A lot of these buildings
Sure.
are gone. And then it became the Trojan Horse was another one. And these were kind of like biker bars, but just hardcore, fantastic fans.
What was your what were you into at that point? What were you guys playing?
We were doing original songs and then stuff like Allman Brothers. Geez, I mean any of the popular rock and roll songs, Foreigner when that came out. We would try to do any versions of songs where we could pull it off. Where in a lot of this stuff, we were a 3-piece band eventually for a huge bulk of the time. So you had to pick songs that could be done by 3 people. So that limits the kind of songs you can do and the kind of chord changes you can do. Even though our bass player Danny could cover an amazing amount, but I always used a lot of technology in my guitar stuff, and echoplexes and tape echoes, and a lot. I was really into all the pedals and stuff, and got into guitar synthesizers. So people would go, well, that sounds like a lot more than just 3 people. But we always had a sound man. We always had lights, light guys, and so we had it was not just walking in and plugging into an amp. We were miking up everything, and
It was a
it
show.
was being mixed.
Yeah.
And we eventually smoke machines and fog machines, laser beams, all this.
Right.
Then there was some great nightclubs. So in San Diego, My Rich Uncle's was another great one. That building is gone up in by the college.
Oh.
But some fantastic places. The scene was then people would come to see you every night. There would be people there that you'd see literally. That was what they did. They just followed you wherever you went. And then if you played in Hollywood, playing at the Troubadour, people would get a bus and come up and follow you. They would come up and see you. Yeah.
So you had kind of your own little groupie section, if you will.
Oh yeah, no, there was a huge following. It was hardcore people, man. They were into it. They knew every word to every song, and again, we were writing. Between Danny and I, over that period of time, we probably wrote 150, maybe 200 songs. Wrote a lot of songs. We were trying to write hit songs, and presenting them all the time, and just it took me a long time to before I ever got there.
Right. Hey, and what about that? Like writing songs? Because I know I grew up in the Motley Crue era. But it was funny because you go through all these eras. But one of my biggest influences was Motley Crue. But after them, you got all these kind of similar bands, and they put out this LP with all these songs, and they had to include the melody, and it was kind of almost cookie cutter. It was almost like the labels were saying, "Oh, that worked. Look, that sells." And for think Nirvana was one of the bands that actually came and disrupted all that. But for a while, you almost couldn't even tell the difference between bands because they all started almost wearing makeup and all these, the hair, and I was like
the glam bands, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not to knock it because I'm still a fan, and there were some good songs and all that. But eventually, you could sense that it was like almost a cookie cutter thing.
Yeah. Well, the hair bands were. We were kind of like hippie band, I guess. It was not like we were never like glammed up or anything, but there was a lot of trends where you went, we're just a little out of sync with the thing. We were more into actual playing and real people with chops, and that really wasn't part of that. Other than when people started shredding and you'd have the Randy Rhodes of the world, great guitar players, in the heavy kind of the more metal thing. We weren't metal, but we wound up playing and doing a lot of shows with those kind of bands. I mean, we were opening for like Judas Priest at the amphitheater, or we did shows at the stadium, San Diego, Jack Murphy Stadium, which is being torn down right now.
Oh man, I know.
With Def Leppard, did
big bands.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Somehow we were managed during that time by a guy named Mark Berman, who I'm still in contact with, and he was Mark Berman Attractions. So he was the Avalon Attractions, which was basically there was Fawn and Silva that were the promoters here in San Diego, the West Coast, and Mark Berman and Avalon Productions. So because he was our manager, so-called manager, we were able to get on a lot of big shows. And we didn't have a record deal, but we would be opening for a lot of huge acts of that time, early '80s and late '70s.
How did that work? I mean, because all these big bands obviously were signed into label contracts. Were you guys just like hired and said, okay, I'm gonna cut you a check for this performance?
Oh yeah.
Okay, that's what it was. Like hired guns, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's cool. That would have been fun to be part of that scene, just to check it out.
What was one of your biggest memories? What were the biggest opens?
We did a show at this is one at Jack Murphy Stadium, opening for Cheap Trick, Chuck Berry,
Wow.
and Joan Jett.
Whoa,
It was
cool.
a sky show, actually.
Okay, yeah.
So the big fireworks thing
Yeah.
afterward, and there was probably 35,000 people. My wife, the number gets higher each time, but it was a sea of humans, and we were a 3-piece band at that point, and brought our own sound guy and everything. Did our own little
Mic
show.
checks and
and that was probably one of the high points where you really feel if you touch a guitar string on a stage like that, it's a big guitar string. It's a
That's pretty rad.
Dude,
you have to just go because it's loud. It's really huge.
That scene right there. That's what even as a kid when you play at air guitar, that's the scene you imagine, like just being up there on the stage with a sea of people and just doing your thing, man. I'm not a musician, but like even as a kid, that's even when in the MTV going back the MTV days, which by the way, that they only played music for like 14 days, 14 years, and then it was no more music television, a bunch of shows. But
they still call it MTV.
Yeah, they still call it. But you watch all these videos, and that would get you going. I mean, because like just to see the stadiums and people doing their thing, and for you, I can't imagine to actually.
And I seem to remember MTV came on, I think about 1981 or something. I remember it was a huge thing when that came on, and that was also the thing that signaled new wave music kind of hit suddenly. And, everything went from hair bands were still there and the glam bands were still there.
Yeah.
And when we were playing Hollywood, but then suddenly what we called skinny tie bands were there, and Elvis Costello suddenly became a huge. And that's
huge
right
deal.
about when I moved to San Diego. We eventually went, dang, I thought of San Diego as these nightclubs that I would be at every night, but we would always drive back home an hour and 45 minutes to Orange County. Eventually, we wised up and went, you know what? We realized San Diego was not just a bunch of bars, but it was a great place to live. But before that, when the skinny tie bands came on, we moved down to San Diego, and there was some great punk bands in San Diego, the Penetrators, some really great bands. And my wife was working at the time at 91X.
I was just gonna mention that because I mean, obviously, everybody that has kind of grown in the area, 91X was huge with the bands, with the Depeche Modes of the world, the Cure, all these other scene, the Clash, but it's so she worked.
She was there for she was in the radio and TV business for years, and she worked for. She was always the executive assistant for the head guy, Norm Foyer. Some great people at 91X, and I mean, just fantastic people. And so we were always able to kind of hang in both scenes. My scene was, much more like rock and roll, but I still really liked all of it. I liked Oingo Boingo. I mean, I thought they were great, so I was totally fine with all of it.
I love Oingo Boingo.
And by that time, I was recording certain projects. I hadn't gotten into business, but I was familiar with all of it and was really getting into, suddenly got, the very first drum machine, the Drumulator. I bought that immediately and was getting into, that automatically forced you into some productions that were kind of like that style. But she worked probably 5 or 6 different radio stations here, and then wound up at KFMB, then went over to the television
101.
side. Yeah. No, not KFMB. That CBS.
Oh no, KFMB was 760.
Yeah,
I thought it was that you're talking about 101, the Rock 101.
Yeah.
But but before that, did she take part? Because I was born and raised across the border in Tijuana, and there was a big thing called Mex Fest back in the
Fest.
Mex. It was Mex Fest because
and
they did
Boingo.
Yeah. He was. I attended. That was one of the best days of my life. It was such.
We went to it. We went to it. Yeah. Oh yeah. I think they took us on a bus. 91X took us all on a bus.
That's
all the employees and everything. And boy, those people were partiers. And it was a very famous guy. The owner of the thing was a really cool guy who had been a huge football star. And I hate that I can't remember his name. John. I'm sorry, I can't think of the guy's name. The owner of the station, they were all great people, but we went to saw that, and also the coolest thing about that, my wife had copies of all the contracts for the bands, and to see how much they were getting paid was really interesting. And we even had the writers of what they wanted backstage, but bands in those days, I seem to remember Oingo Boingo was getting like $100,000 for that show.
That's right.
Yeah, I mean the money, though. When we would play, these shows, like the money was good, and the shirt money and the T-shirt money is cash walking out the door in a metal suitcase with a handcuff.
Right.
And I mean the amount of cash that those bands are making, like Def Leppard and those guys. Oh my God!
I've always wondered how come they didn't do anything. They didn't repeat it because it was a huge success. It was a little crazy because it was too many people.
Wasn't it at a racetrack or something?
A racetrack down. It used to be.
There must have been 30 or 40,000 people there.
It was a sea of people. I remember that, and it was a good time, and it was a whole day, and it was so much fun. But it did. I don't think maybe one of the problems was that they weren't really ready for that because it was just out of control with people.
Well, and plus just the traffic thing. I somehow I mean those parties with 91X. they were partiers. That whole thing. They were really. So I don't even remember how we got back. I mean,
Good times.
I have
Good
no
times.
memory of that at all. Somehow everything worked out. But honestly, I remember the trip down, but I don't remember the trip back.
Another thing that happened back in the day in the music world, and I got the chance to work behind the scenes for a little bit. It was a street scene down here in downtown.
Oh, yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
I was like, I
I
thought it was
played
out-
those.
Really?
Yeah. I was playing with the last one that I did was I played in a band called Comanche Moon, and great writer Paul Kamansky, and I worked with them. I did the most famous album that I did with them was Electric Lizard Land, and the guy Joey Harris from Country Dick, Montana, and of course the Beat Farmers. Joey Harris always called it the Sergeant Pepper of San Diego.
Wow.
Yeah,
Hey,
I'm still very proud of that record, and we did it in this building right next door, But I was working with them, and we played. The street scene was very fun.
We gotta find it and check it up. Yeah, street scene. I used to love just the fact that you could go from one block to the next and just different types of music, and it was the whole concept was fantastic. I thought it was great. And big bands and big artists came through.
I know the guy who did all those shows, and I think Kevin Hillman might have had something to do with those too. And he was the guy we just did the San Diego Music Awards with. He kind of runs that. He's also gives a ton of work for charity and stuff like that. So he does a lot of good stuff. And he's been really good to me. The San Diego Music Awards and all that, they were great.
Yeah, especially with that award you got. How does that? How did it feel to receive that? Were you like proud that you look back and like, wow, man, it's been a good ride?
Well, it happened in such a strange time that it didn't really sink as much as you would think. There was no big show or anything. It was all virtual. I'm very proud of it. You kind of look at it and go, I guess they ran out of people this year or something. But I've been around a long time and have worked with so many bands in town. So I think my buddy Bart Mendoza, he's a journalist, a music journalist here, and great songwriter and great all around person. He had something to do with recommending us. I did a lot of albums for him in the old days. Did all the early Shambles records and.
But just listen. Yeah. I mean, listening to everything you've done, and like I said, we haven't even touched your studios and the recording and all that. We were right before we sat down. We were talking about, you kept up with the times because that's another. The music scene has changed, but also the technology to record it has also changed, and you kept up with the times.
I've just spent the last 3.5 months completely redoing the entire studio. I mean,
Blitz.
Blitz Recording Studios. Yeah, been in business officially since 1986.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I mean that,
and this is full time. This is what I do for a living, making records but I do records and books on tape. Doctors come in and do the spiels for selling. Different pharmaceutical companies hire me, and I also have written a lot of soundtracks for people. My brother's in the video business, and for a long time he worked up in San Francisco, and he would say, "Okay, I need a tune for." Little kid at the window looking out, it's raining, he wants to go out and play, so I was selling songs, little chunks. They would buy little chunks of music.
Wow, that's
for
like
Bank America, Magellan, Google, Mercedes-Benz, Ford. So I was able to just supply little music tracks because I was always working on songs that had nothing to do with rock and roll. I would make songs just in order to learn how to use a new piece of gear. You'd get a new synthesizer and go, okay, I'm going to write a song, and by the time I do that, I will know how to use this piece of gear. I'm a self-taught everything. I never had engineering school, and then eventually wound up teaching other people. But I'm a crazy reader, and I'm very focused. I'm a one-track kind of person, so I can stay on a mission.
What do you think that comes from? What do you like?
I think it comes from my childhood of being when I was on crutches and stuff as a kid. I was always kind of a one-track. I could stay really tenacious and focused on one thing. I'm still able to stay on the mission with, that's what making songs is. You have to stay really focused and stay enthusiastic about it. And if nothing else, I have a lot of enthusiasm. Maybe when I hear myself talking, playing back at the studio, I'll go, "Oh God, wind it down." Just wind it down.
Why?
Oh my God! When I hear my own voice talking, and I'm in the heat of battle in making a song, and you're trying to get the singer to do something, or the guitar player, or I get wound up and get really into it, and then I'll hear myself talking back, where I hear playback, and I go, "Oh my God, how do people stand this?" But you never get used to the sound of your own speaking voice.
No, you don't.
I'm used to the sound of my voice singing, but when I hear myself talking, I go, "Hey, just calm down." It's too wound up,
Now, as far as technology, though, to make that jump into the digital world, because that changed. Back in the day, we're talking. Obviously, when you were doing as a kid, you were doing
my J.C. Penney tape recorder,
two recorders to basically do multi-track. Now, you can do so many things, but another thing that I've noticed in the broadcast world, like a lot of people they hesitate, and they're like the digital kind of, it's not for them, but you managed to just make that adjustment.
Well, and I'm dealing with that even right now. I just changed from probably in the studio world, the current thing that we all make records with, and I guess in film too, is Pro Tools. Pro Tools is where I live basically, but I just changed to the brand new Pro Tools, where now you no longer even use a console. Everything is a completely different thing. And I'm coming into work. Of course, I get nervous before every session because you want to be good. But I've been trying to learn this new system, and it's a whole nother world. How to get playback in the headphones. How to get more than one mix for the headphones. I'm again relearning a whole new system on how to do the newer Pro Tools. Mixing and mastering and all that stuff is pretty much the same, but how you get things into it and get everyone happy in the room with the mix, it's a completely new, fresh start. And it took me about 3.5 months to rewire the whole place. I just went through an insane mental ordeal, literally. And I rewired the entire thing and upgraded to the sort of the current state-of-the-art version of it. And it's really a challenge. I started with tape recorders, then went to, eventually you get more and more tracks and more. Then we got sequencers, which was before computers, but that was how we would go. We would expand 16 tracks into 32 tracks because a lot of the stuff the tape recorder would play, and one channel on the tape recorder would be SMPTE timecode, which you guys know about that in the video world. It would feed the machine, and if you were at measure 30 in the song, you'd hit the tape recorder, and all of the sequencers and all the keyboards would then play along with it right in time. So we would have just tons of machines and the tape recorder driving everything, and everything would chase and lock, hopefully. occasionally you'd have a dropout and go, okay, that song, how are we going to do this? But in those days, we didn't have the ability to edit or cut a song and just say, let's take that verse out. You'd have to do it with a razor blade on the tape.
Just like film back in the day.
Yeah. It's basically the same. Honestly, it's a little faster, obviously now, but but
there's something to be said for recording and your snapshot.
Yeah.
Where you don't have to set everything back up.
How we did it in those days, if it was a complex song, there would often at the console, one guy, you'd say, okay, you're going to ride your guitar solo, guitar player guy, and here's your lines, don't go past that. Then bass player, your part here is a little low, so you're going to ride that up, and it would be all hands on deck. Then it got too complicated to do that, so we would set up and go, let's get the intro, and you'd print that to tape, and then we would just hang that piece, cut that, with a little more to spare, and then hang that piece of tape across 2 microphone stands, then go, okay, now let's mix the first verse. Then hook those 2 together, then go, okay, now let's mix the chorus because we have to have this whole other setup for that. And then you'd just splice it all together, and then eventually you'd have the whole song. And that's how you got real complex mixes in the analog world. I'm sure a lot of people were doing that. I know Steely Dan was doing their mixes like that. Eagles were doing that. It got too complicated, and this is before any automation. Once automation came in, then you didn't have to do it. But
Game changer.
But all that stuff still plays in how I work today. You all you have to do is just break it down, get a certain section, and go. Once you got that, you got it. And then you
move on.
Got to be very methodical in the music world. A lot of technology.
So what's next for Richard Livoni? From being a kid and playing in front of your high school and getting that rush, being actually in crutches and playing stadiums and recording and all these things. What are you looking forward to?
Well, I'm looking forward to playing live again, of course.
Absolutely.
I'm real excited about the Sons of Edison 3 CD that we're just about to release here. We're finishing up some stuff on our website. And then I've been lucky enough to get, I have my band GTF. I play with, this is kind of a all across the country group, mostly people that I worked with here in San Diego. And I brought in session players. We have a great sax player, John Rekovics, my buddy John Kane, keyboard guy that I used for years in recording sessions. I could bring him in for any style of recording session. Now he lives in New Orleans, but we work still remotely. And the GTF band, we've been really lucky this year. We've had 3 things in the top 10. Just had a song that I wrote called 3 a.m., just hit number 1 2 weeks after it was released in, I think, the 1st of January. And this is just mind-boggling for me. This is smooth jazz. This is in a venue in a type of music that I totally enjoy. No one ever pegged me for a smooth jazz guy, but it turns out that we've done shows. We've played places like the Blue Note up in Napa a few times. Did the Earl Klug Jazz Festival in Colorado Springs at the Broadmoor, and it was like big 3-day jazz festival. And that band is there's some great people in it. I'm working with George Franklin is the bassist and kind of the main character of the band. And I'm the producer engineer. Then I always wind up playing keyboards on the tracks or guitar, of course. And in most of the first 2 records, I did all the drum tracks and percussion tracks too. Now we're fortunate to have a gentleman named Ron Otis, who played with Aretha Franklin for the last 10 years of her life, I think, and played. I've seen him on television a ton of times, even with Aretha, and he plays with Bob James and Earl Klug and, heavy hitter. He lives in Detroit. Wonderful, coolest guy ever. Our percussionist is Juan Escovedo, Sheila E.'s brother, and he played with Prince for the last 5 years and was pretty much very close friends with Prince. And our recent single that we released was it's an old Boz Scaggs song called that we redid over here at the studio at Blitz Recording, and we brought in Rebecca Jade, who is a very, very up-and-coming jazz singer here in San Diego. I think she won Best Jazz Artist at the Music Awards, where I got the Lifetime Achievement Award. Rebecca Jade came in and did background vocals. Amazing singer, super cool girl. She's also Sheila E.'s one of her background singers, and played at the Grammys, I think, with Elton John.
Wow.
So I'm suddenly with these highfalutin, really hotshot players, myself, and so this is a great band, and we also have 3 backup singers, and so that's a pretty exciting thing, and we're working on the 3rd single. The album hasn't been released yet, and the album is actually, the last time I checked, number 66 on the top 100 jazz charts, and we haven't released the album yet. But the first 3 singles that I've done have all done really well. I never thought that would happen, especially in the jazz, in this smooth jazz. But this is pretty hip stuff. It's not like a lot of that is I totally appreciate any great playing, but the genre is we think of it as like Chardonnay jazz or Chardonnay music or wallpaper, but this is pretty hip stuff. It's we do it in our own way, and it's just surprising to me. This last song that I wrote called 3 a.m. That's somewhere in the top 10 right now. It hit number 1, and I just did this song at the studio myself, and brought in our bass player George Franklin and John Rekovics on saxophone. And I had kind of an image of it, of being a late night kind of psychedelic little kind of a movie, and they came in and just nailed it in real, like one take. And that song is basically me playing everything. I did have Ron Otis overdub some drums on it, but they were nice enough to say, "Oh, this song came out good," so they put that on, and we've done well with that. But we've had three top 10 singles in the last 6 months, I think.
Well, that's pretty. That's very, very. It seems like it's a very exciting time. And
so that's what I'm looking forward to, finishing that record, to get to the end of your question. Yeah.
Well, you know what? I'm happy for you because it's, exciting times, and all these things are coming together for you. And we really want to thank you for taking us on this ride. It's just wonderful memories, just going back and just the transition.
And we were at the Mex Fest together.
Who would have thought, right?
Yeah, isn't that amazing? Yeah.
I got one more for you before I let you go. It's
yes,
like
Chris.
You have been, it sounds like, married for quite a long time, or with your wife for quite a long time.
1976.
Through this whole ride. I mean, that
she's awesome.
Yeah. I mean, what you want, just briefly, you got to give props where props are due.
My wife Stella I always say she's the brains of the operation. I don't know. I wouldn't own a house if it wasn't for her. She had the brains to she knows how to deal in the business world. It has been, she worked in the corporate world and the radio and TV thing. And then, she's had some highfalutin gigs, that held us through in some tough times. But, I've always been working, but she's always been working too. She retired, but I got a feeling she's going to go back to work. She's just amazing, hilarious, beautiful, really just I mean, the love of my life, and I really am lucky. And we live walking distance from the studio, so
That's always
this
a plus.
I can walk to work. I probably put maybe 500 miles every 6 months on my car. Of course, right now no one's going anywhere.
Right.
But Stella is just an amazing human being. She was the oldest of 13 kids.
That's awesome. I had an opportunity to meet her. We had our opening party here at the studio,
Which was a great party, by the way.
Yeah, we did. We had a great time, and we got to get that going again when we can. Love to get some live music in here and some good food and some good drinks and make another party of it.
You bring in the Blitz Brothers or GTF. Yeah. GTF would be a blast for anybody who's watching. These guys have an amazing facility. What you guys have done with this place is fantastic. It is really wonderful, and to have it, right behind the recording studio, it just makes me feel like, okay, we're getting this kind of little art scene happening here, and a lot of creative people in this little hub right here.
You're absolutely right. We're trying. We got some good synergy going.
Yeah,
and, As soon as we get past this thing and can get our feet back on the ground, we're going to make something special happen.
And thank you for hiring me for some of that audio stuff that you've done. I appreciate that.
As some of you know, we do a lot of commercial production as well, and Richard's helped us out with VO sessions and whatnot. And we would definitely
and the thing for Voices for Children that we did. My wife Stella worked for the head of that. She was the executive assistant for the CEO, I think, of Voices for Children. So it's a weird little coincidence.
It is a very small community that we all work in and have fun in. But Richard, for both me and Carlos, I think I'll let Carlos close it out here, but we were very appreciative of your time. We will definitely get some of your material up on our site and our YouTube channel. So we want to get some of your fans over to our site and vice versa. So we'll stay connected for sure.
Absolutely. I was just going to mention that, keep us posted. We'll be connected when you release a new record, and then what you have already, so we can. You never know who's listening.
We'll hook it up.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Carlos.
Richard
Thanks,
Livoni,
Chris.
thank you so much for joining us. It's been a blast.
Yeah, fantastic.
For Chris, Richard, myself, we'll see you next week on the other side. It was really good to talk with Richard. Check out Richard's Blitz Studios for all of your recording needs. And make sure to visit our website at www.theothersidepresents.com. And please follow us on social media. We are on Instagram at The Other Side Presents, Facebook, The Other Side, and check out this and other videos on YouTube. Thanks for riding with us. We'll see you next week on The Other Side.